It was a cold, damp day in January. Teenage girls were talking and laughing as they prepared to take ballet class. I was seated at a steel chair at a round brown table. The table had chips in it, and I ran my fingers across that chipped wood as I anxiously awaited the response from this young music producer seated right across from me. I was 9 months sober, and this was my first time sharing something I'd written with anybody. It was also my first time pursuing this artist life that called me to get sober. The ballet class started. The pianist began to play a plie waltz as the ballet slippers glided across the marley floor. Beads of sweat began to form at the corner of my temples as this young music producer looked at me and said, "I bet you have a lot of songs in you." And to that, my stomach caved in. My armpits began to sweat, and I was transported back into time. It was a warm spring day in Boston's theater district. I was anxiously awaiting my sister. She was running late. I was 13, and I had not yet learned anything about patience. As I leaned my back against the warm brick of the Schubert Theater, smells of greasy, cheesy pepperoni pizza danced with cigarette smoke as people took their last drag or their last bite before entering the theater. Out of the corner of my eye, I see my sister and a couple of her friends exiting the theater. Before she could say anything, I shouted, "Where were you? I've been waiting for you forever." And to that, she responded, "I was in the lobby waiting for you." In that moment, my 5'8", overweight, awkward 13-year-old frame became a 5'5", overweight, awkward 13-year-old frame. I bowed my head as I followed my sister into the theater. As we walked, I could hear one of her friends saying, "God, what is wrong with your sister?" As we walked up the stairs towards the balcony, I couldn't help but notice the gross burgundy carpet. I wondered, do hotels and theaters all shop at the same ugly carpet store? And as we got to our seat, I gasped. We were in the very last row of the entire theater. I sat down. My 5'8", overweight, awkward 13-year-old frame couldn't barely fit into the chairs. I was so uncomfortable. And worst of all, the stage looked like shit. We were seeing the musical that rocked the nation, Rent. All those months of hearing Seasons of Love. And this is what the stage looked like? I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath and prepared myself for the worst night in theater history. The music began. The power blows! As the stage came to life through lights, song, and dance, for the first time in my entire life, I felt seen. I felt heard. And when the show ended, I thought, I'm going to write a musical one day. What about my life? What about addiction? See, when I was 13, I fell into a depression. I had stopped showering, stopped brushing my teeth. I wasn't doing well in school. I was lost. When I was 11, my father's addiction ripped the family apart. When I was 12, he disappeared. And at that time, we couldn't talk about any of it. My father was African-American, my mother Afro-Latina. I was brought up Catholic. Shame and guilt were embedded in the fabric. Dysfunction and secrets were its tools. So to see a show like Rent told me that it was okay to talk about the things I was going through. That one day, someone would care about what I had to say. So as I looked at the young music producer, a type of rage, anxiety, and resistance rose up in me as I said, "No, I don't. I was a terrible piano student. I didn't do well in school. I didn't go to college. I'm not trained. I can't. I sunk back into my chair and I felt defeated. For years, the idea of writing a musical got me through. Even when I stopped believing it was possible. Even when I tried to suppress it through 8 years of active addiction. Years of depression, sexual assault, abusive relationships, a car accident, losing job after job, friend after friend. When death came knocking on my door, the voice of the artist, the voice that told me I had a story to tell, saved me and brought me out of the darkness and into the light. And yet, when faced with my greatest dream, my greatest fear appeared. And I was paralyzed. And the young producer leaned in and said, all you need is a melody, and you can write a song. Immediately, a light turned on in my head as fear and purpose danced. The very next day, I find myself in Studio 6 at the dance complex. The studio was on the very top floor, and nobody would hear me unless I wanted them to. I sat at an upright, tan, out-of-tune piano. I looked at the keys, and some were chick, and for some reason that brought me comfort. And that voice entered the room. Noticing my fear, it said, just take a leap of faith and have a bit of hope. For the next 3 weeks, I would show up at that upright, tan, out-of-tune piano and play the piano for 1 hour a day. I didn't know what I was doing, but something inside me told me that if I just kept showing up, I would have a song. After 3 weeks of showing up for 1 hour a day, I had 1 minute and 58 seconds of music. No lyrics, just music. I recorded the music, and I ran downstairs to one of my new friends, and I said, hey, I wrote a song. Do you want to listen to it? And as she was listening to it, I knew, depending on what she said, would seal my fate. When she was done, she said, Elizabeth, it's good. It's really good. And in that moment, I became pregnant with my musical. This is Treatment. My name is Elizabeth Addison, and this is my brave.